Ross, and this is a Transformer Technology Tech Talk. It's a little bit more than a tech talk because our guest today, John Trout, has a lot more to share. John, how are you?
I'm doing well, Alan. How are you?
I'm good. John, I want to talk about things. Our next issue of Transformer Technology is on specifications, on transportation. There's a lot of technical knowledge everywhere. I mean, IEEE's got a lot of it, but experiential knowledge is what is really something that Transformer Technology is looking to promote. How have people in the industry experienced things? You've probably developed it was probably one of the first things you did when you were at FirstEnergy the first time, is developing specifications for transformers. When you're developing specs, what are the most important things that you tried to do or looked at?
So you kind of mentioned a little bit of it, Alan. Looking back at the past, seeing what has worked well, and then looking forward to the future. But the two things, the way I'll break it down is two things. The first is, if you're creating a specification, you want to set clear expectations. You want to be able to define to the manufacturer that you're going to work with what your expectations are, what you need that piece of equipment to do. And there are many manufacturers out there that make transformers for many different applications. And so you need to be able to set for them what you need it to do, how you're going to apply it to your particular scenario, and what capabilities it needs to have. So there's specialty transformers for steel plants, there's transformers for generating plants, there's transformers that are out on the grid. They all are very similar, but they have different purposes. So you need to be able to define in your specification what you're going to do with the transformer you're trying to purchase, so that the manufacturer can provide to you the best fit for what your application is. So that includes things like physical constraints. Do you have a limited space to put this particular unit? Do you have, is it next to a building? Does it have to fit in a position where an old transformer came out? Things like that. So you want to be thinking, what do I need to tell the manufacturer so that they understand what I need to do with this particular transformer? The analogy I use is, if you went to a car dealer and told them you needed a vehicle, you could end up with anything. But if you told them, hey, I haul dirt a lot, I haul stone, I work construction, they're not going to try to sell you a small economy vehicle. They're going to sell you a truck, which is what you need. So you got to tell the manufacturer what you need this piece of equipment to do that meets your expectations. The second part I want to talk about is, you mentioned it, long-term planning. So when you purchase this transformer, you intend to keep it for quite a while. And there's a lot of things that go along with it that you need to think about your capabilities and your warehousing and your spare parts inventory and all of those things that's going to take over the next 25, 30, 40, 50 years to maintain that transformer. So you want to be telling the manufacturer, here's the type of equipment I need on the transformer because I already have spares for it, or I plan to have spares for it. Things like that, and how you want to do maintenance on this unit. For example, if you're planning to do routine full inspections and drain the oil out, you need to tell the manufacturer how you intend to get the oil out so that you can do your inspection. Do you want valves on your radiators in case you have one start leaking? You can replace a single radiator as opposed to having to, cut off the whole thing. So those are the sorts of things you want to tell the manufacturer when you think long-term, how you intend to maintain it over the course of its life.
Got to do a follow-up question on that.
Sure.
And we've been involved in this in a lot of situations, you and I personally, in different things in our careers, where we helped somebody develop specs only for them to go out and take it to a marketplace.
Yeah, usually there's a bid process that goes along with purchasing these. There's usually an established vendor list, but you're always going to bid, or most likely always going to bid the transformer purchase.
Many times the supplier that's going to bid on it can help you develop better specifications, can look them over. But was there a time, or was the relationship, you didn't violate the bid process, but you did ask somebody, hey, can you see what's happening? Am I missing anything in the scope of these specs? Did you ever use any situation like that, or people that you would use, friends that you would buy lunch for and just say, look this over? Or is that not part of the bid process? You can't even get involved in that.
Yeah, so there's plenty of consultants out there that can provide you that sort of support.
Right.
It's a consulting relationship. They'll help you develop your spec. You mentioned that I've done some of that in the past for companies, but there's plenty of that out there. You'll also get feedback from your manufacturers. They'll give you, questions. They'll ask questions about your spec and say, "Hey, we do it slightly differently. Here's how we may handle this particular area of what you're requesting. Is that okay?" And that's up to you as the purchaser to validate whether you can accept a deviation from your spec. And those specs are not static documents. They are living, and they need to change periodically as technology changes, as material enhancements are made. So there's always a feedback that happens with the manufacturer. Well, they provide you that insight into what they do and how they do it and why they think it's the excellent way to do it. And you can decide then how you want to incorporate that. That usually doesn't happen during the bidding process. That's usually because you've established the relationship with the manufacturer.
But I want to go to another thing that I know you're experienced in right now. That is plant inspections. When you finally made the spec, the bid's out, you got the bid, but now they're starting to build the transformers and they're doing the different levels or the different stages of inspection. Talk a little bit about that from the perspective of purchasing people, procurement people. What should they do? What should they hold the manufacturer accountable for? And what has been your experience with plant inspections? Because I know you've done a ton of them around the world.
Yeah, so plant inspections are a great opportunity to interact directly with the actual manufacturing capabilities of whoever you've chosen. In your bid process, you're talking with the procurement and the people that are putting that out to you. But once you get into the manufacturing stage, and doing a plant inspection lets you see, if you're going to go, it lets you see the individual manufacturing processes, how they wind the coils, how they do tank manufacturing, how they do installation, how they route the leads around the transformer. All of those things are really vital to understand the real capacity of the manufacturer. And most manufacturers would love to tell you all about their quality control processes. That's something that's important to them. They enjoy talking about it. So when you go, ask about it. Ask how they track material. Ask how they track different components as they come from different areas of the factory to eventually come together into the transformer. So ask them about that. They'll love to tell you about that. The second part is you want to be thinking about the layout of the facility. How is the facility laid out so that you make sure you're getting quality products? Are messy, dirty manufacturing processes separate from the clean processes? For example, you would not want to have your winding room and your tank manufacturing areas right next to each other. Tank manufacturing and welding and cutting creates lots of debris and dust and dirt, and you want your windings as clean and crisp and pristine as possible. So you don't want those two inhabiting the same space. So you just look for those sorts of things. You think about what their capacities are from, how they dry their coils, how they size them, all those sorts of things. And most manufacturers, they love to talk about their plant. They're proud of it. They want to tell you about it, and they want you to ask questions. So my opinion or my thoughts is that you use this opportunity to build the relationship with the manufacturer. The other thing I'll say is when you're going through and talking to those individuals in the factory, ask them about their experience. Ask them how long they've been doing it. Ask them why they love what they do, and find out about their level of experience, specifically in 3 areas. The engineering group, you want to know how experienced they are in the design. You want to know how the winding area, the winding room, whatever, what's their experience level, because that's a really key component. That's really one of the more important areas of the transformer manufacturer. And you want to know about the testing people. How experienced are the testing people? Do they know the standards? Are they familiar with the standard that you're requiring the testing to be done to? Do they handle testing from other standards like IEC versus IEEE? How experienced are they? And once you have a good understanding of that, it'll give you some confidence in the capabilities of the manufacturer. And again, they love to talk about it. They want to tell you all this information. So use it as an opportunity to grow that relationship.
So you've just talked about that plant visit where you're going out there inspecting and doing it. There is now acceptance testing where you've got to come in And you got to say, okay, I accept this. Now, obviously, they got to transport it and you got to do commission testing before you put it in. What goes on when you do that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's important for the purchaser to understand what tests are important to them that they want to actually see. You want to see the manufacturer do some of the tests. Not all tests are as important to see, like wiring tests. You may be able to let the manufacturer handle that and just show you a test report of how they wired the control panel. But things like the lightning impulse testing, things like the partial discharge testing, those are really valuable to witness because it gives you an insight into how well the transformers put together. And so the key is you want to ask good questions about how they set the test up. Make sure they understand what the testing standard is, the IEEE standard or IEC standard, whatever standard you're requiring the testing to. You want to make sure that they understand that standard, they know how to set it up, and you want to watch very carefully to make sure that the data they're getting matches what the acceptance criteria is in those standards that you've laid out. And it requires familiarity of you as the owner of what those standards say and how the results should come out. And you got to be willing to push them a little bit if things don't look the way you expect, and ask them to explain and have them show you how they're setting it up and how the results fit in with what your expectations are.
The last thing I want to talk about is the commissioning when the transformer actually comes in and it's transported. What are some of the things you've seen?
So I'll start with this. It does go back to that spec again, because the transformer spends the vast majority of its life sitting still, not moving. And the time that it really spends moving and subject to things that are going to damage it is when that transportation. So you want to make sure you've got it spec'd out properly, that it's going to handle the voyage from wherever the manufacturer is to wherever you need the transformer. So you got to have good definition in there about what that voyage is going to be like. And one of the things that's important, again, about setting expectations is the manufacturer, depending on whether you are responsible for the transportation or you ask the manufacturer to be responsible for that, they need to know if there's any constraints. Like, for example, if you're in a very mountainous area, you may have a situation where the only way to get to your location is through a railroad tunnel. And they need to know that, because you would hate to have the transformer coming down the railroad and hit the top of the tunnel. That's not a good day for anybody.
Yeah.
And you just want to be careful. I'll tell you one story. We had a manufacturer or a situation where we bought a transformer. They did a route study and everything looked good. Well, there was a minor mistake in the route study. They studied the route and they checked bridge heights, and they checked in the center lane closest to the left lane closest to the center of the highway. And the bridge had an arch on it. So in the center, it would have cleared. On the right lane, with the bridge was slightly lower, it didn't clear and it snapped the bushing off. Those are sorts of things you need to be careful to make sure that your route is well planned. And again, it could be you doing it as the purchaser. It could be a third party, or it could be you could have the manufacturer handle that directly and set your expectations about when you take ownership is it's delivered to your site on your foundation. So those are the things you need to think about is when you're talking transportation, have you considered all the little logistics to make sure that that unit can get where you need it to go?
I want to go into something that I know you're really heavily involved in now, and that is preparing the next generation. So you're now that bridge generation between my generation and the next generation. And that's going to be an enormous challenge for you, an enormous amount of fun for you to be able to make a difference in generations. But we're going to talk a lot about that. But what I'd like to ask, one snippet, what are you doing in that right now?
That's a great question. It's a great opportunity, Alan, as we look to the future. It's funny how quickly time passes. When you feel like you're a brand new engineer and then all of a sudden you blink and you realize you're mid-career and you've been working at this for a long time. But the thing I like to try to remember is I see it as an opportunity to pass on knowledge to the next generation. I see it as an opportunity to help them grow into whatever the next big revolution is going to be. And we have some ideas and thoughts about what that might be, but we want to prepare the people that come after us to be able to take on the challenges that they face and the challenges that we've faced and help them learn. So it's a great opportunity. And it's one of the things that I very much enjoy is trying to develop that next generation of engineers and commissioning people and all the people that go along with maintaining the utility industry to make sure that we're well suited for whatever the next big change is going to be.
This has been a tech talk. This has been much more than that. This has been inside someone who's done it, experience, who's made, I'll say this, John, made some of the mistakes that all of us make, grown from it. But in Transformer Technology, as the editor of that, I appreciate what you bring to it, and I thank you for joining us on this today.
Well, thank you very much, Alan. It's been really nice talking with you. I'm glad to sit down and talk through some things. So thanks for your time, and I appreciate it.